It was the strangest night, the kind of scene I don't fit into.
There's a lot of discussions about that, both like us as a band prior to choosing a producer to work with, and also when we settled and working with Ethan in the studio. He definitely stopped the session a few times early on to have a chat about what is the goal here and what are we trying to do, because like recording a record and production is kind of one of those how long is a piece of string kind of things, because there's so many different ways you can approach it and attack it. And I think what he really wanted to do at his end was really get on the same page, make sure we're all understanding what we're trying to do. And he was really big on just doing it really, really simple, you know, doing it all live, doing vocals live, doing everything just in the room together and not really doing much else to it. But he was wanting to clarify whether that's 100% what we were really up for. We'd spoken about really wanting to capture the band's energy that we have in a live show on a record. So we sort of followed his lead, I guess, with that. In terms of the tones and the sounds, a lot of that's just a conversation between him and us, and sometimes you'll have a strong idea, sometimes he will, and whoever's idea sort of, you know, works for the song is sort of where it ends up. But as a whole, it was pretty much, once we all got on the same page in those first few days, it felt like everybody knew what, in their mind, what we were going to create and what it was going to sound like.
Yeah. And Ethan's super positive in the studio, like no one I've ever worked with. For me, as playing the drums on the record, I've looked up to him as a drummer for many, many years. Not just as a drummer, but multi-instrumentalist, and going into the studio, he was nothing but encouraging in terms of the work we'd already done in pre-production and the arrangements, and he might have a subtle suggestion here and there, but he was not your typical hands-on controlling producer. He was very much part of the team. He'd jump on keyboards or say, is it okay if I maybe play something on this, or guitar or some percussion? And it sort of made us feel like we were all part of a team, including Dom, who was engineering it, and the guys that were assisting. It was a real collaborative thing.
Yeah. And what about the studios, Real World, Peter Gabriel's Real World Studios? Did that actually have an effect on your mindset, the surroundings?
I think so.
Absolutely, yeah. Particularly that studio, like that is, I think, best space I've ever set foot on in terms of a working space. Because you're so isolated, it's like just out of Bath, and you're in sort of countryside, I guess, really, and on the premises there's everything you can need, like for food or entertainment or kicking a footy and obviously working and recording and priorities there, as you can see, table tennis, and it was great. It was like a compound basically. We didn't leave for a couple of weeks, I don't think, till we actually got off site, and then it's an incredibly well designed place. Like there's so much natural light in the studios. You have these beautiful outlooks from all the live rooms. So even when you're having this downtime, maybe between tracking, you're still in a really friendly and warm sort of headspace.
And creative space too.
Creative
you
space.
Always wanted to go to the studio and play music. You wanted to be in there for 12 hours a day. You weren't getting exhausted by that. I think you were attracted to the space.
It was pretty weird, like the first weekend when we actually had days off. I remember on the Sunday, we all just somehow ended up back in the studio, and like that would never have happened anywhere else we'd worked. But on a day off, when we weren't recording, we all just came back in and were playing and hanging around in there, because it was a beautiful place to be in terms of the light and the atmosphere. And so we just even on when we weren't working, kind of in there. So it's the sort of place where you really felt like things were going to happen when you're in there and working.
The way you recorded direct to tape, was that a reaction to the way you recorded the last album? Because I know when you were getting to the end of Harlequin Dream, you were getting mixes coming in and having to deal with those, but you were still trying to finish other songs, whereas this method sort of eliminated that. Was that a consequence of that?
I was going to say, I think it probably has as much to do with Ethan as anything, or maybe more so. So it's to some extent one of the things we've learnt, and this is our third record now, and we did an EP as well, so we've worked with 4 different producers now. You realise that you want to be working to that person's strengths as well. We've at times probably tried to hammer square pegs into round holes, like thought we want to do it this way, but that's not really the way that person works. And so in this case, it was sort of like Ethan said, this is how I like to work, and if it works for you guys, then that'd be great. So it was kind of like he drove that one a little bit, and to be honest, personally, I didn't even know until we got in there exactly that's how it was going to be. But then that first day we walked in and there was no computer in the studio, it was sort of like, oh, okay, like this is pretty real, like it's going to happen like this, and it meant that they were doing rough mixes as we tracked, and so you'd be hearing pretty much straight away how a song was sounding, rather than waiting till the very end of the process, like you mentioned last time, mixes coming in kind of at the back end of things. It was like a song would come together, and we would, as we tracked it, and then there might need to be a BV and a bit of percussion, and then it would be done, but we would be then moving on. So it meant you had a really good picture of what was happening as the process went along, rather than it all coming together at the end.
It's ironic because we were saying, I think Simon or Killian was saying earlier, like we'd wanted to capture the sound of the live band. That had been our main goal in going into record 3. We didn't feel like we'd achieved that before. Maybe the closest we came was the EP, and like I think sometimes you know what you want to achieve, but you don't know how you're going to get there. And Ethan and the way he worked, it was kind of terrifying for us the first day going, we're recording to tape, like if I bugger this up, like I've buggered the rest of the boys up and we've got to do it again. But it just like it really slotted in well with actually getting to where we wanted to get to with the live sound, and it became a liberating thing more than a frightening thing.
Yeah, because of exactly that, I found like one of the things again that we found as a result of that process was the personality of our band came through a lot more dominantly than it ever had before. Not to say that everything you hear these days are edited, but with the luxury of a computer, you can fix things, dare I say, and do things. And I think one of the things we found is it, again, trying to capture the band live and sound like we sound live is just, we just play the song and it's onto tape. You can't do anything with it from there. I found, we all thought anyway, that the personality of all of our performances and our sense of groove and our timing all comes through a lot more dominantly, which is a good thing.
A lot of the sound that we make as a group is about where we sit on the beat, you know, where everyone's playing with each other, and so much of when you go in and editing something is where something should be.
Because you can actually see it, you know, there's a line that says the beat should be there.
And you know, they talk about the Stones and that often, you know, the guitars at times are in front of the drums, you know, and when you're editing things they won't let that happen, you know, but that creates sound. And I think when you record this way, you know, and we definitely bought into the romance of it, but and you know, but it does allow that, you know, for us it's only been 5 or 6 years, but that amount of time of playing, you allow all those idiosyncrasies and that sort of interaction to come through, which is for us so exciting to hear on a record.
And I think as well, like listening to like these guys play, from my perspective looking out, it was amazing. And listening back now, I'm like, it's amazing that, you know, Killian on guitar and Simon's on the bass and John on keyboards and Hosking singing, like that was done then. It wasn't changed, it wasn't gone over, it hasn't been edited. Like it feels like a bit of a feather in your cap. I don't know that we ever believed we were capable of it before this recording, and maybe if we would have known going in, it would have been a different thing.
One more thing to add to it, without giving the lily, I actually think more bands would do it. I actually think more bands are capable of doing it. I think part of the problem is that when you go into a studio now, it's just not done. I think most producers and engineers don't do it now. They don't have the confidence to do it. Yeah. Partly because there's a certain expectation by labels, there's an expectation by radio presenters and things as well. And so it does sort of create this culture where bands don't go in, you know, if they manage to save up their money to go into a studio, you want to get it right because you've got maybe one shot to try and get some radio play. And so it does create this culture where you don't go in and record like this, you know. But I actually think that there are plenty of bands that could go in there and do record exactly like that if there's the right person in there going, just fucking leave it. You don't have to edit it. You don't have to do all that stuff. That's what I think anyway.
Is it tricky recording like that from a dynamics point of view? I mean, there's songs like Just Dumb and Foxhole, which are sort of very understated, and Walk the Wire and Where'd You Go are more brash. Performing like that in the studio with the headphones on, is it difficult to, in the first instance, to get the levels right, the dynamic?
I think it's the way we did it is the best possible scenario on how to capture the dynamics, and I think we're basically in one room facing one another, so we did still have headphones, but actually we can hear acoustic sound, and we can sense each other's energy by looking at how we play. So I think you can actually create dynamics a lot easier like that than being completely separated and closed off. And I think tape captures dynamics and allows the dynamics to actually come through, because it definitely does recreate that performance. So in my opinion, I think it was actually easier to get.
And it was also because, like, often you can have your own individual mix in your headphones, which has been a big part of modern recording for ages. But Ethan again sort of led the charge, and we just jumped onto it about just having one mix, and we all share that mix, so we're all hearing exactly the same thing, and we're all feeling it the same way. And basically, you know, everyone's sort of leading from vocals and drums, basically, is what we're all mainly listening to. And the idea is what it was, if you need more of yourself, it is in there, just take off an ear, because you'll be close to your instrument. Like, just doing it in a more of a manual kind of process, I guess, really.
As you would in a rehearsal.
As you would in a rehearsal room or a show, you might walk closer to your amps or closer to the drums, because I'm losing it a bit. So you could sort of do that thing, and you could almost look at somebody and you'd sort of zone in on and hone in on what they're doing in order to be able to hear more of them. So you actually end up, oddly enough, I think, getting a lot more dynamics into it, because you're there performing and you're in the room, and
it becomes an interaction.
It's,
like
you're hearing the room.
You
as
really,
well.
you can, at times it's almost like you feel like you can hear a bit of a conversation between things, because people are listening to what other people are doing. And it sounds silly, like, to say we haven't exactly done that before, but it's sort of like you're thinking about playing your part and you try and play your part right. That's a different mentality to playing, but hearing, oh, the guitar's doing this now, so let that do its thing, and maybe my part changes a bit. And I think you create something that's a little bit more special, maybe.
And a really interesting thing that to go with that Ethan pointed out, there's a thing that's called demo-itis that all artists seem to suffer from, where you do a whole bunch of demos, and then when you get into the studio, you're like, oh, I just wish it kind of sounded like the demo, and we didn't suffer from that this time at all, because there was that dynamic. The same as when you're doing a demo, you're usually just sitting in a rehearsal room and just putting a couple of mics around and just trying to get an idea of what the song's going to be, and that was the recording. Like, that was the recording process this time. And Ethan would say, well, you know, for me personally on the drums, if you want to hear more floor time, hit it harder. Not, I'll turn it up in the mix later. He'd say, yeah, mix yourself, and you know, the same for
encourage you to play the, like, dynamics, rather than having it being a thing an afterthought.
Yeah, because even his miking technique is what he's talking about essentially. Like, rather than having, like, a drum kit might have, you know, 4 different drums, a couple of cymbals, and miking them all up individually, and he would control the balance. He doesn't do that. It's predominantly 3 mics, like sort of 2 overheads and a snare drum. So all the dynamics are then left up to Tim to play. So whatever it was, but like a kick and 2 overheads, yeah. And so it means if Tim wants this song to be a thunderous sort of tom-driven song, he's going to play those hard, and Ethan has no control over how loud or how soft they are. So it really is again about capturing more performance, and that dynamic stays there because that's how it was captured.
In general, did you use your own gear, or was it one of those studios that had so much gear that you think, I'll try that?
Probably half and half, I think, for some of us.
Ethan
had a lot of equipment.
He just had all these road cases with, like, numbers of, like, one of however many, 40 things or whatever. So he sort of would say, oh, just, I thought about maybe this guitar, he'd bring guitars for Dave, had keyboards for me.
Every day you bring something else, and you get stressed about having to take it all home.
He had all his percussion laid out, like, and it was amazing seeing how many different tambourines and shakers and little things. Like, he's a freak with percussion, and I think Tim would know more of the names of things than me, but it was just, there was an amazing array of things he had in his collected.
I got to play the snare that he played on, like, Ryan Adams records and Ray LaMontagne records. Like, it was like it was the top of the mountain. And I was loving it.
And he's a storyteller, so every bit of gear has a story that goes with it, like where he got it from or who
John
did
Bryan gave me
it.
this one. So.
Got a guitar from David Crosby or something.
The
and
Graham
Graham
Nash.
Graham
Graham
Nash,
Nash,
sorry,
that's
getting it
right.
wrong. Yeah.
There's some great keyboard sounds on the album. Particularly, I noticed in 1,000 Faces and Ghost 11, there's some nice keyboard sounds. What were you using?
So 1,000 Faces was pretty exciting for me. It really comes back to the doing it all at once. Like I've never sort of done it this way before, but we actually had 4 different keyboards that I played on the song, and I played them all like one after the other sort of thing. So there's a Wurlitzer, then there was an old Roland string machine thing from the 80s, like a really 80s tacky sounding fake strings. Then there was a real B3, and then there was an Italian like organ thing, sort of, I don't know, it's a transistor sort of sounding organ. So I would be like one to the next, and I think there was only 2 takes that I played the song correctly, and one of those was like luckily the take where everyone else got it together.
You had to get him a swivel chair.
Yeah, I had a stool originally, and it wasn't working because I couldn't spin around fast enough. Sort of thing. So it would have been ridiculous to watch, but it was fun.
Dave, last time I was talking to you, you just got the Gibson J45, I think, with the bags pickups in it. You were searching for a better acoustic sound. How's that work out for you?
For a better pickup, was I?
You
Still
just,
is.
You just put the LR bags in it, I think.
Okay, well that's gone. Obviously didn't work out that well.
Okay.
I've got now what's called a mag mic pickup in there, which is doing better. In terms of the live thing, that seems to be doing the job. I've got 2 Gibsons. One's a 57 J45, and one's a new J45, of which the new J45 I just massacred a little bit and put another hole in it, which it has 2 pickups in it, of which I tried blending 2 pickups on this kind of never-ending quest for acoustic perfection, of which it didn't work. But
Now you got a hole in your guitar.
that's it. But it's been fun. I didn't want to do it to my old one, obviously.
Paralysed
So
by
I
choice.
haven't. That paralysed by choice. That's exactly right. TED Talks. But
Lots
yeah,
of
I'm
tuner
still.
pedals, wasn't there?
I know. Look, I've overcomplicated a bit, but that's the thing. I mean, I think if it was just, if we were playing songs like Foxhole, the whole set was like that every night, it'd be easier to.
Yeah.
You could make a beautiful acoustic sound, but the problem is because we then kind of have these, almost rock songs, I guess, where the acoustic becomes almost 80% percussion, pretty much. You don't want a lot of tone and body, so that becomes the issue in the live context, I guess. So that was my thinking in regards to the 2 pickups, which I'm still potentially going to explore. So yeah.
And what did you use in the recording?
In the recording, I used a mixed bag of things. I actually used, Ethan had a really beautiful old, I can't remember, as a jumbo Gibson
J200.
J200, which I used only on one song, on Breakdown Slow, and then we realised that it was slightly broken, unfortunately. And then I was really fluctuating between a great old 50s Martin, 50s or 70s, and my J45. Yeah, so just those 2. So it's usually a simplified approach for me compared to these guys, which are swapping around.
And Killian, what did you use on the album?
Well, Ethan had a couple of things. Like I used like the guitar from Graham Nash that gave him. I used that once or twice, and then I sort of was. We did obviously a lot of touring last year, a lot of time in America. So I picked up a whole bunch of guitars on tour last year. So I brought, I don't know, a handful of old things that I'd sort of accumulated, a couple of old Fender sort of tellies and Gibson hollow bodies, and that was pretty much predominantly what I used, I think, most of the time.
You'll take this album out around Australia later on in the year. Is there any particular song you're really looking forward to playing?
Probably varies person to person. I'm looking forward to playing 1,000 Faces. Yeah, we wrote that as a group, and I wasn't necessarily really attached to it, and then of late I really love it. So we played it acoustically last night at the JB Hi-Fi thing, and it was just just really
That's
fun
fun.
for me to sing. So
I'm with you there. I
Yeah.
can't wait to play that. Yeah.
funky one.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun to play this whole album live, I think, because it's already kind of a live album in a funny way. So I think it's going to be fun to add it to the set and play with the old songs.
All right, guys, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.